You guys want some chaos? We got some fucking chaos in the form of bombshells that were dropped in an article today about Crystal Lake, the Friday the 13th television series. There's a lot to digest. There's a lot to discuss. There's a lot to pull our hair out. Let's talk about it.
If you like horror, hit that notification bell, smash that like button, and push that subscribe button now.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Nick Push. Thanks for tuning in. Today, we're going to talk about an article that dropped about the Crystal Lake TV series and what the hell happened to this series. Why was it temporarily shut down? Why was Fuller fired? What kind of was it? What were people thinking? A lot of he said, she said, a lot of back and forth, a lot of blame game, and a lot of just chaos and what seems like children at play with a lot of money. But we're going to talk about it. Like I said, there's some bombshells. As I get into this, we're going to pull up the article. I'm going to kind of go through it beat by beat, but not read it all. But as I'm doing that, tell me what your thoughts are on this article down below in the comments. Are you happy that this got nixed? Are you sad? Because there's a lot of good things, in my opinion, for both sides of that. So let's get into it. This article is from TheWrap.com. It is titled Inside the Drowning of Crystal Lake. I mean, that's a perfect subtitle right there. How unpaid writers, inexperienced execs, and questionable bookkeeping undid the Friday the 13th series. All right, like I said, I'm going to go kind of bullet point action here and kind of give you guys my thoughts. First bullet point as we scroll through this article. Who was going to be set to play Pamela Voorhees? Charlize Theron, who is an outstanding actress, by the way, and probably way too good to be in a Friday the 13th series. Holy shit. So that's a huge nugget of news right there that would have been fucking awesome because she'd be fantastic. So that's 1 point for me in the disappointed category, I guess. But let's read a little bit here. In addition to Charlize, it says a $300,000 deposit on a soundstage in Canada had already been placed. This is as of last April. A couple directors were earmarked to direct episodes. And then one thing we already knew was Kevin Williamson, who wrote Scream and is going to direct Scream 7, was earmarked to write an episode as well. According to Kevin, he tweeted a month ago or so that this was going to be an all-chase episode, which sounded really cool. But in here, it describes it as the show's Red Wedding episode, referring to Game of Thrones. You know, that's a big, famous episode, so that's cool. It also says, and here's a cool nugget, it was going to be set entirely on a frozen Crystal Lake, with the Summers cabins trapped under snowdrifts. I had packed for being away for 7 months, said one member of the Crystal Lake team. Fascinating. Now we know Vince and his team over at Womp Stomp did Never Hike in the Snow, which was awesome to see Jason in the snow. This would have been awesome to see as well. Let's continue on. Says suddenly the hammer dropped on an $85 million show that A24 was producing. $85 million for a Friday the 13th TV series. Now, I know inflation has been going wild, right? Everything's expensive these days. Fucking everything. I know that, you know that, you know that. But $85 million for Crystal Lake seems fucking absurd to me. Absolutely absurd. Like how? Why? It's Pamela and Jason killing people in a setting of a camp. Why? Interesting. Very interesting. One might say irresponsible, and maybe that's partly to do with why this thing was nixed, but let's continue on. It says 2 days after a notes call with Peacock where one of the streamer's executives said the pitch was exactly what we wanted to hear, A24's head of television, Sam French, and his A24 partner abruptly fired showrunners Brian Fuller and Jim Danger Gray. It's an awesome name, by the way, Jim Danger Gray. According to an individual with knowledge of the conversation, production on the show had been slated to begin in 3 months. So we knew that part. Continues on. It says A24 had produced TV series before, including The Curse, The Sympathizer, etc. And this decision, which effectively halted development on what was meant to be the first new piece of Friday the 13th since 2009, shocked those close to the series. Now let's get into it. It says, so what the hell happened? Let's see. Continues on. Crystal Lake was plagued by inexperienced production executives making questionable decisions. This moved a little on me because of ads. Problems with the show's writing staff and conflicts between the showrunners and executives, according to several Crystal Lake team members who spoke to the Wrap. Remember, guys, a lot of these team members and stuff, this is all unnamed sources, so we got to take some of this stuff with a grain of salt, right? But sometimes when there's smoke, there's fire as well. It says there are divergent accounts of how far the show was over budget. At the same time, studio insiders suggested to the Wrap that the show unraveled mostly because of Fuller and Gray. So right away, we got Fuller and Gray's side saying one thing, A24 side saying another thing, bickering back and forth, blame game. It's like being at a fucking playground. A24 declined to comment, shocker, but a source close to A24 said the studio had made television with complicated people who we love. That's the background of the company, people with strong visions. About Crystal Lake, said the source, the studio didn't feel confident and had to pull the plug. But, of course, if one person says one thing, we need to hear the other side. So here's your other unnamed source. And this is where I get into the fucking chaos I was talking about earlier. It says, but one Crystal Lake insider put it differently. It felt like everybody on the Brian Jim side, Fuller side, were trying very hard to make the show. A24 felt like they were doing everything they could not to make the show. Why are they fucking dropping $85 million then? Interesting. Here's where we get a little juicy little bit of drama here. How much Peacock knew about the showrunner's removal is also a source of contention. Several sources said the streamer hadn't known about the removal ahead of time, while others suggested they were intimately involved with the decision. Interesting. Back, forth, blame game. Let's continue on. We're going to skip the origins of Crystal Lake because we already know that, I assume. You know, how Jason was created, why, blah, blah, blah. Let's see here. Here's where we get into some interesting stuff, though. Where are we here? Here we go. This is what I like. This is I'm about to read something that really excites me if this was going to be created, and it bums me out that it's not. It says, in the grand ambition of Crystal Lake, each season would be a deconstruction of the first 4 Paramount movies. The series would incorporate lore from several sequels, but remix that material in a way similar to Fuller's Hannibal. That's what I wanted, right there. That's a gut punch for me. You have season 1 with Charlize Theron playing Pamela, and it's, you know, that story, but fleshed out a little bit more characters. You know, we don't need to see Pamela getting beaten by Elias or anything like that, but flesh things out a little more. That's what you need to do in TV, and that excites me. Then you got season 2, you got Paul and Ginny, right? Or characters like Paul and Ginny, and you're fleshing them out more. And you got that, and then season 3 and 4, etc. Like, that's what I wanted. Each movie being a season is a cool concept. And it's different than what we've had. So that excited me. I hope they keep doing that. But that's a gut punch for me. Then it continues on. It says, we had The Mask. We had the sequels. We could do whatever we wanted. He had a good path forward, which I really did like. Said a source close to the A24 side of Fuller's vision. Here's where we get into something I don't like, and it's probably would rub fans a lot of wrong ways here. And it says, some guy says, initiated a long, elaborate dance with A24, which agreed to all of the terms he and Miller wanted. Get into some of the legal bullshit, right? The studio was looking for a globally recognized property to move them into a more mainstream territory and aim to maintain the, here we go, A24-ness of Crystal Lake by installing Fuller. Now, that's where I'm mixed, right? What does A24-ness mean, right? For me, you know, I haven't seen every A24 movie. I know they're all well done and shit like that. But for me, it kind of has like an uncomfortable feeling watching those movies. Is A24-ness necessary for Friday the 13th? I don't know, because I don't know what the fuck that means. But if you ask me point blank, do you think it is? Not knowing what it means, just kind of a guess, I'd say no. And that's where I think a lot of long-term hardcore Friday the 13th fans might have been turned off. So interesting. Now, remember, A24 still owns the rights, so that might not be going away. Yeah, crazy. All right, let's continue. Here we go. Written in blood is the section of this. So by 2023, a development room had been established with Fuller. That's where we see the picture of Fuller and all his staff of writers. But then the writer's strike happened, right? And it says by Thanksgiving, the strikes had been resolved. And by the beginning of 2024, Crystal Lake was back on track. Except there was a problem, because of course there was, because it's Friday the 13th, because there's always been fucking problems for 15 years. Lost my thought. I lost where I was going here with now this. Okay. Despite being the first studio to sign WGA's minimum basic agreement, A24 refused to convert the writers who had worked on the initial development phase into actual paid writers, according to several sources. So they're being cheap here. Even though it's $85 million, they're being cheap. That's what the article is saying. That's what I'm taking from the article. I'm sure it's more complicated than that, because things are always more complicated than they seem. But let's continue. It said the writers had gone on strike in part over this practice of merely keeping a development room instead of converting that room into a paid writer's room. And it was now verbatim, according to the WGA's new deal with the studios. A24 assured Fuller and Gray there would be a paid writer's room, but later backtracked, according to a source. Remember, unnamed source, take it with a grain of salt. It said the lack of paid writers created an unfortunate logjam. Fuller couldn't deliver polished scripts because of writers who wrote stuff, and these writers apparently were owed $100K each for work they already completed. Interesting. So now we got into some more of the business side of things, which Friday the 13th fans, that's going to make you pull your goddamn hair out, because we've been dealing with the business side of things, or the legal side of things, for fucking ever. Frustrating. All right, let's continue on. Some more about the writer shit. Let's get into one more thing. Talking about budget disputes, and here we got a picture of Brian Fuller, and he is looking very dapper? Sure, we'll go with dapper. I'm not going to be mean. Here we go. Each episode of Crystal Lake, which was intended to have 8 per season, was budgeted at around $9.6 million. But according to sources, A24 wanted to cut that in half. $9.6 fucking million per episode. Okay? So I said A24 was being cheap earlier with the writers, right? I don't blame them here for wanting to cut that in half. This is fucking Friday the 13th. Like I said earlier, I know inflation and all this shit is going crazy, but $9.6 million is absurd for an episode of TV. Absolutely absurd. Fascinating. As the source continues, it was all set at the camp. It was very feasible. So then we just get into some more of the budget bullshit here. What does all this mean? Well, it means there was all kinds of chaos, like I said, behind the scenes. It means they had some great fucking ideas, but with all the inexperience of writers, executives, of A24, there was just a fucking chaotic environment. And as much as I love all the great ideas that I saw, the Red Wedding type episode with Kevin Williamson, Charlize Theron, like way overqualified to play Pamela Voorhees, but that's awesome for us. Despite all those good ideas, with all that chaos going on there, it's probably for the best that we didn't get this right away. Why don't you get your shit together, A24? Figure out what you fucking want and come back to us with a high quality product. Maybe curb that A24-ness a little bit, even though I know that's your brand, that's what you want. But just remember, this is Friday the 13th. Keep it simple, stupid. Okay? But I love the ideas of a season for each movie. That is good shit. So yeah, I'm still trying to wrap my brain around all this stuff. Like I said, it was kind of a bombshell that was dropped today. And take it with a grain of salt, because it's all unnamed sources. A lot of blame game, a lot of bickering behind the scenes of what actually happened. So tell me your thoughts on what we read in this article, what we went over. Are you happy this was nixed after reading that? Are you bummed this was nixed after reading that? Tell me in the comments. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.